Joining me now, John Carney, Breitbart News finance and economics editor, co-author of the Breitbart Business Digest, and Steve Moore, host of More Money on WABC Radio, co-author of the Trump Economic Miracle. Okay, let's get with the sounds. Let's play the first sounds from Trump in Chicago. Here it comes.
There's tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse in our country. And if you could cut it, you would have a surplus without even going into growth. But growth, we will grow. We're going to bring companies and jobs in at levels that you've never seen. And you would never be able to do it because you're not a believer in tariffs. The only way, let me tell you, the only way you can do it is through the threat of tariffs.
You know, I heard my pal David Asman say this. I said this to Trump when I interviewed him 2 Fridays ago in Florida, Mar-a-Lago. He's already negotiating. He understands. Exactly. He has started to negotiate merely by threatening baseline tariffs and other mechanisms. He's putting the word out. There's a new sheriff, or let's say there's a new and updated sheriff who's come to town. And if they don't reduce their trade barriers, then they're going to have to pay for it, John Carney. Now, economists don't seem to like that. We're going to get to the issue of inflation and tariff. But my point is this right here. Trump he's negotiating here in Chicago like he negotiated with me in Mar-a-Lago, and he'll keep on negotiating right until November 5th, the day he's reelected.
And you're absolutely right. The American people love this. The latest ABC News poll showed 57% of Americans support, and they phrase it as taxes, higher taxes on imports. So they tried to phrase it as, negatively as they could, and they still got a commanding majority of the American people saying, yes, I am in favor of that. People know, as you were saying, inflation is not an issue. Inflation is not caused by tariffs. Milton Friedman taught us a long time ago, inflation is caused by monetary policy. It's caused by deficit spending accommodated by the Federal Reserve. Tariffs don't cause inflation at all. These economists know better. When they say Trump's going to cause inflation, they're basically fibbing.
Well, it's just funny. Steve Moore, it's an odd thing because Trump believes in reciprocity. Let's start there, okay? So if China keeps developing unfair trading practices or continuing unfair trading practices. And India is another perfect example. India has among the highest tariffs in the world. Or you got other places like Brazil. United States should not and cannot stand by and let them deal with us on that basis, okay? That's how we will lose all of our manufacturing jobs. The upper Midwest, the Midwest and the upper Midwest will be blown out of the water. Their economies will get killed. That's what Trump is trying to say. Now, can he say it better? I'm not sure he can say it any better. I just think that some people, particularly in the economics profession, won't listen to what he's saying. This is about unfair trade.
So you're exactly right that when Trump gives a talk like he did today, he's talking directly to President Xi in China.
Yes.
He's talking to Europeans. He's saying, you play by the rules or we're going to hit you hard. Now, I'm not as enthusiastic about the tariffs as you are, but I will say this. If you do his policy on tariffs, I wish he would add to that, though, 2 other elements of his agenda that are very much pro-domestic production. One is deregulation. These regulations chase
Did he mention that today, deregulation?
Yeah, but he did, but he mostly talked. But the other is, how in the world are you going to create more jobs in the United States if you do the Kamala Harris agenda, which is $5 trillion of new taxes on our businesses? So if when you and Laffer and others did that tax cut, it brought jobs and capital back. So it has to be the whole package. Reciprocal tariffs, deregulate the economy, get government off the back of our businesses, and lower our corporate business tax rates so it's a place where a business want to invest.
It's a package.
Yeah.
It's a package.
Yeah. I actually don't think people are freaked out. They're like, Trump said 10%, 20% tariffs. I think we're going to see tariffs a lot lower than people expect because unlike what the interviewer said in Chicago, it's not going to start a trade war. What they want to sell into the U.S. They're not going to retaliate with tariffs. What they are going to do is exactly what Trump has been saying. They are going to reciprocate by bringing down their tariffs. They are not going to say, we want to fight you, we want to get into a trade war.
That's the fun here. The use of the tariff in Trump's world. Remember, the guy's a master negotiator. That's what he did for a living before he became president. Yes. Okay. The use of the tariff is actually a weapon of free trade because you will get lower trade barriers by using the tariff. Here, one way to look at this. Remember he said the other day, if John Deere moves to Mexico, they're not going to get a 15% corporate tax rate. He might even put 100 or 200% tariff on it. So what happens? John Deere will not move their plants to Mexico. You'll never see the tariff because they won't do it because he's just negotiated them right out of it. He said to them, don't you dare. Don't. But he's saying it's carrot and stick, right? If you do, if you stay here in the States, wherever they are, Peoria, Illinois, I'll give you 15%, and I'll give you deregulation.
Yeah, look, he has a record on this. In his term in office, we imported about $1 trillion of capital into the United States, not out of. I mean, remember he used to say, and it was so true, for the first time in 50 years, factories were moving from Mexico to Michigan, not from Michigan to Mexico. Right. So it worked.
All right, some more. Let's do, we got something about Elon Musk here. Here it comes. Roll tape, please.
I have great respect for Elon. And
you now want to put him in charge of deregulation.
Not deregulation, cutting.
Cutting wasteful spending.
Cutting.
Every single
which would include
including
deregulation.
All right, Trump on Musk. This got to be a big plus. Musk has become this superhuman figure. He's the smartest guy on the planet Earth. All right? But I think it's a big lift. Like, he's like so futuristic, getting done things that people never thought could get done. He still is trying. I mean, if they'd let him, he'd be able to wire up all the broadband into rural areas because he'd do it by SpaceX, Starlink, and so forth. I mean, I think Trump is serious. I don't believe Musk will come into the government and be a cabinet member, but he will be an important advisor, maybe a commission, and that will cut a lot of spending, which people would like.
I think that Musk is somebody who believes that the way we're doing things now is not the optimal way, and we can do things better. Whether it's sending rocket ships up into space or designing cars, he's always trying to look for a way to optimize it. He thinks we need to get 1,000 times better at launching spaceships into space so that we can get to Mars. He also thinks we can do government a lot better than we have. I think that's great. Let's give him a chance. As you said, I don't think he wants to go into government. I think what he would like to do is be an advisor, be on a commission. That makes a lot of sense.
Who better, by the way? Who better than Elon Musk?
Yeah,
I mean, the guy he knows super efficiency. Everything he runs has been fantastic. And you could easily, in my opinion, having studied the budget for 40 years, you could find $1 trillion out of the budget. And by the way, Bret Baier is doing that interview, I guess, tomorrow with Kamala, and he tweeted out, what questions would you like to ask? And here's the question I'd like to ask. Ask Kamala Harris, can you name 4 or 5 government programs that you'd like to get rid of? Because she has 0 efficiencies or spending cuts in her. All she has is $5 trillion of tax increases.
And more spending.
Yeah.
I mean, her first economic plan, she's had several now, including this goofy one for black men, which would get them all high on pot. But she's never had anything but increased spending. Yeah. And, I mean, the first program was $1.7 to $2 trillion. That was just a couple months ago. All right, here's Trump on inflation. Take a listen.
People are betting that your policies are going to drive up debt. They're going to drive up inflation. So they're going to drive up interest rates. Are the investors wrong?
Yeah, I had 4 years, no inflation. I had 4 years, no inflation.
But that was...
Biden went 2 years with no inflation because he inherited from me. And then they started spending money like drunken sailors.
Actually, he didn't even have 2 years. It started in the first year, but putting that aside. See, Mickowaith was the co-editor of The Economist magazine, and he represents... you know, the liberal Keynesian economic view, the mainstream view that produces such stellar Nobel Prize winners as Simon Johnson, who thought Trump's plan would, by the way, cause
you get a Nobel Prize for that,
a stock market crash and a depression. But I think it's important, Steve Moore, the whole issue of inflation revolves around tariffs again.
Well, look, the facts are the facts. Trump was president, and it is true that the inflation rate in his 4 years in office, you know that number, 1.9%, which is actually below the Fed target. Kamala and Biden come in, they drive it up to 9%. Their average has been 6.5%. So how in the world, unless you suffer from Trump derangement syndrome as an economist, would you look at those two records and say, I think Harris is going to be better on inflation, when Trump conquered inflation and Kamala Harris and Biden threw it, through the roof? It doesn't make any sense.
So watching Micaway ask these questions, and you know what? I'll take him. Let's call him a straight shooter, okay? I think he's very biased against Trump, but it's not important. He is who he is. The point is, he's a static guy. He's not a dynamic guy. He doesn't see, for example, that tax cuts, particularly supply-side tax cuts, will produce the kind of growth, productivity, higher real wages, or put another way, that the Laffer curve works. He would never admit that. You'd never hear Micaway or any of his associates, I guess at Bloomberg and before that at The Economist. They don't believe the Laffer curve works. And we're sitting here, and we just got numbers for 2023 and 2024. Corporate revenues, we're still inside the 10-year window for that Trump tax cut in 2017. All right, it's only 24. Corporate revenues alone are off the charts, higher than they ever predicted. They do not understand that.
They're also wrong about the deficit because they always look at it as one thing. So if you run up the deficit through government spending, that is directly stimulating inflation because the government is not producing anymore. This goes to what you're saying. When you run it, if the deficit increases a little bit through taxes, you're actually encouraging more production, which introduces supply into the economy and is anti-inflationary. So when these economists look at it and say, well, Kamala's deficit will be here and Trump's will be here, that's acting as if those are created by the same thing. They are not. When you run up the deficit through spending, that creates inflation. If you increase it a little bit temporarily through tax cuts, that does not increase inflation. That's why we saw no inflation under Trump and massive inflation under Biden and Harris.
You know, it comes down, this came up last night, Stephen. If you spend your own money, that's inflationary. If the government spends your money, that's not inflationary. It's a belief that government will always do it better than the private sector. I would like to ask John Micklethwait or others of his ilk, exactly what, if any, tax cuts would you recommend that would boost economic growth across the board? And what would the revenue impact be? You'd have to come back to the Laffer curve. You'd have to come back to marginal tax rates. The Economist magazine, where Micaway comes from, used to actually believe that many years ago, but they've all gone.
But the big story, I think, today, Trump looks so presidential. He was under control. He had really solid. That kind of Donald Trump is, if he can be like that for the next 3 weeks, he will win this election in a landslide. If they don't like the wild, crazy stuff. They don't like the name calling. When he talks about issues, look, the economy is his home turf. Right? He owns the economy.
He's playing on it.
He's got a record.
He's playing at home now, isn't he?
Yep.
He can actually win the popular vote. I didn't actually believe this, but I was talking to some people, I won't say whom, but they run large-scale polling operations. By shaving the margins in New York 10%, in California 10%, he could actually win the popular vote as well as the electoral.
I just want to win the Electoral College.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not get greedy.
I was driving up in Vermont, beautiful leaves, fall, and I saw Trump flags in Vermont, Larry. If we can win votes in Vermont, he can win the popular vote.
Steve Moore, thanks very much. John Carney, thanks ever so much.